How you doing, everybody? My name is Dean Olson. I am a songwriter, radio host, and producer from Orange County, California, and I'm really just an average artist making music, but when I get behind this microphone, I become the strong writer on the radio, helping songwriters and artists keep musically fit. And the way I love to do that is through faith and hope and encouragement, by taking in the stories and experiences told to me by my wonderful guests, and by learning from the best in the business and passing it along to you. And I am really looking forward to meeting and sharing with all of you yet another great young musical artist from Terra Australis Incognita, as we like to say, or also known as the land down under. And Angus Gill, pictured right here with me, is a singer-songwriter, producer, engineer, musician, comedian, and I think an award-winning chef. One of those might not be true, but I'm really not
an award-winning chef.
But what hasn't he done? I mean, one of them might not be true, but nonetheless, I'm really honored to have this guy on the show today. And enough goofing around. I want to put my hands together and welcome everybody, Mr. Angus Gill.
Hey, how you going, Dean?
Welcome. Welcome to my show. I'm goofing around with the names of, where you are, but yeah, you're in Australia. You're the third person from Australia, and also, a young person who's making music, and it's real exciting getting to know all this new talent that I'm seeing over there. I don't know how new it is for you. You've been doing this for quite a while, performing.
Been doing it for a while. I'm a bit of a stalwart, I've been doing this since I was about 7, and I'm 22 now, and very rapidly aging. 22, no, I'm not. But I am an old soul, that's for sure.
What were you doing at 7 years old? Were you it said you were a comedian. I understood you got on stage and started, doing some kind of, telling jokes or stories, or just what was that like?
Well, the comedian part of me kind of came about through my live show. I wrote these bits of stand-up, and I learned how to entertain a crowd from a very young age, because I got my first gig when I was round about 10 at my local heritage theme park in Wauchope, my hometown, called Timbertown. And it's this kind of period village with, all sorts of bullock drivers, blacksmiths, this big Timbertown train, the old schoolhouse, the old church, these kind of old steam machines, huge big things, just pumping away. And so it's a real step back in time. And I got my gig there when I was 10, and I played there every Saturday for 4 hours for $25 and a meat pie. And so I would sing all of the old Australiana songs like Click Goes the Shears and Waltzing Matilda and all of these songs that you've probably never heard of.
Well, Waltzing Matilda is pretty famous. Yeah, we know that.
Yeah. But that's really where I cut my teeth and learnt how to entertain a crowd. Because some weeks we'd have 500 people in there, and there'd be so much energy, and I'd bounce off that energy and really play to the crowd. And sometimes I'd put on a headset and I'd walk around Timbertown singing to all of the different people. And then other times, there'd be a slow trickle of about 3 people. And so you really had to work harder to kind of give the same, performance to 3 people. So it really taught me a lot very early on. And I realized I kind of had this natural knack for storytelling, and I had this comic timing that I inherited from my father. And so I started writing these stand-up bits kind of in my show to segue between songs. And it started off by kind of, borrowing other people's jokes. And then I learnt to write my own. I learnt how, the comedy writing process works, and what they're doing to be able to achieve that humor and the surprise, because comedy is surprise. So yeah, that's how that part of me came about. But I kicked off when I was 7 because I was absolutely hopeless at sports. I was good at school, credit to me, but I was hopeless at sports. My swimming teacher, after my first lesson, she said, in front of me and my mum, she said, that boy will never learn to swim. And she wasn't too far from it either. You know? So, you know, I wasn't off to a great start, but Mum dragged me along to a shared guitar lesson with my friend. And I thought, oh, I can kind of do this, and it's a bit fun. And so, yeah, a local retired country music singer who lived around the road was talking to my old man, and he offered to come around and show me how to play chords, and he taught me to sing at the same time as I was playing guitar. And so that's where the country music side came in. And so, yeah, it took me a couple of years. I got that gig at Timbertown, and then I was off. So, yeah, there was no stopping me.
Sounds like fun. Doing those jokes and everything, or doing that comedy act must have been a confidence builder. I mean, it probably got you. I don't know. Were you ever shy before that, or were you pretty outgoing and as a young lad?
Well, I suppose I was quite a shy, you know, reserved young guy, except I also had an experience very early on because my nan worked at the local community radio station. And so I would often kind of in school holidays, she worked in the office, I'd go down there and hang out and get to talk to the presenters. And I got my first kind of gig presenting a radio show when I was 12, and that really gave me this confidence that I really needed. And I suppose that was another great character building thing. And so I'd put on this kind of radio persona, you know, kind of like you just slip into it as soon as you turn on the mic. Yeah, you kind of all of a sudden, well, hello, you know, the smooth tunes from so and so, you know, and so it just kind of, you know, you turn into this persona, and so it was a great confidence building thing, and it also helped me as a performer as well. Well,
that persona you're talking about, you and I talked before we actually started the show. There's no persona there, is there, with me? Because it just, I didn't change into anything. I think it was the same guy.
No. But there are so many comedians and performers that I've met or that I'm friends with, and that you know, they're so big and full of life on stage and funny, and then when they kind of jump off stage, they're just a really quiet kind of introverted person. And so you do see that a lot as well. But I think that whole, you know, doing the Timbertown gig and radio presenting early on, it really helped me come out of my shell a bit. So that is a tricky thing. I met a lot of people, and plus I've heard that a lot of you know, big time musical stars have that same thing where they come to life on stage, but when they come off, or, you know, before and after, they're very shy, very reserved. They're saving it, I guess, or the stages where they sometimes they think that the stage, that's their real personality, and then the one off stage is what they're, you know, they're hoping to build up to the one they, you know, what they really want to be is that person up on the stage, getting lots of attention. And so that sounds like when did things started to break for you? It sounds like you were you kind of, on paper, everything looks like you had some great success. Were any kind of like road bumps or speed bumps along the way? Yeah, well, I suppose it's always been, because I started off very young. I suppose you know, it's taken a while for me to kind of you know, show that more mature side and to be viewed more seriously, because, you know, I've been around for quite a while, and some people, you know, have still kind of seen me as that young kid, and so I suppose it has I suppose, you know, like anything, the music industry, the entertainment industry, you know, has its fair share of ups and downs, and it's very unpredictable like that. But I suppose what really made me commit to this whole thing, and, you know, it was kind of the point of no return, you know, I wouldn't go back to doing anything else, was when I had the opportunity around about 12 again to perform with one of my heroes, an Australian singer called Adam Harvey. And so I met him at the radio station, and I told him that I was just going. I took an hour off school to come down and meet him, and I was going to head back and sing the national anthem at the Anzac ceremony. And he said, "Oh, you should come up and sing with me tonight at my show." And so he invited me to come and sing with him. And I just remember that it was a packed out gig. And he got me up, and I saw the whole backstage experience, you know, and I got that real thrill while I was up there singing with him, and it was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And so that really set me off on a path. And then I went to the Country Music College, and graduated from there, I think, when I was 13, and I recorded my first EP called Live Wire around about that same time and released it a year later. And then, yeah, I started to have music out, and I was opening for some of our great Aussie artists, Troy Cassar-Daley and Sarah Storer, Becky Cole. And so that's when I started to get my first taste of life on the road. And then things just went up and up from there. And so I produced my first self-produced. I really started to get into production after I recorded my first album, first EP. And but even dating back, you know, right to the start, I always had this keen interest in production. Like, even when I was in primary school, I would borrow a computer microphone from the library, this tiny little crappy computer mic that would plug into the mic socket on the computer. Sure. Yeah. And I would download Audacity and start producing my own tracks, you know, and they sounded absolutely horrible. But there's still people out there that have got copies of those first albums that I did and produced in my home studio and sold at my local country music club when I played there every, Saturday of each month or something. So, yeah.
Well, you were drafting up some greatness in the making. Yeah.
So I think after my first proper recording experience when I was around about 13, and we had some of our best players in this country play on that album, it really opened my eyes to how they did it properly. And the whole process. I was very much intrigued by that. And for my school work experience, I actually hooked up with some of our, ARIA-winning producers and sat in with them and saw what their workflow is and how they engage with artists when they come into the studio. And all of a sudden, they create this space where the artist can feel comfortable to be able to open up and do their best work, because it's always a daunting thing for an artist to step into a recording studio. And it comes, with insecurities. It comes with that pressure of trying to get it all right and to show the best side of you. And so, it was really great to see how these producers would open up to the artists and then allow them to do the same, and show this patience. And you're always trying to work towards a solution when you have an artist in the studio, because what will work for one artist will not work for the next. And so you have to kind of be problem solving on the spot so that you can bring out the best in that particular artist.
That's true.
So, it's a great challenge, but it's also a real pleasure and a thrill to be able to work with, such talented people. And so I've right now I'm producing a lot for other artists as well as my own stuff, and particularly during COVID, when we can't be out on the road, touring, it's been a very fruitful time for my production and for my writing. I've been writing a lot for my own things, but also for other people's albums. So
absolutely, that's great to hear. Do you see that in yourself? You're still young at 22 years old. Do you see yourself doing that some more? Producing for others?
Oh, 100%. And even to this point, I want to produce people that I really like their work. So I'm taking on things that I'm really passionate about. As well, but I really do see myself as a songwriter first and foremost, because even from a young age too, that was something that I kind of had a natural kind of gift, for. And so when I was about 12 or so, I had a guy, a well-respected songwriter in our industry, sit me down, and he could see I had kind of a natural talent for writing that I'd picked up from osmosis, and he sat me down and really laid down, showed me the craft, and laid down kind of the ground rules, because you need to learn the rules first before you can break them. And so so he really, and I'll be forever grateful for that opportunity. And he invited me to come and spend the weekend with him and his wife, and he sat me down and played me all kinds of different music, and was pointing out all of the things that made that song great, or made that song relatable, and taught me the forms, the different tropes that you use in writing. And so it really set me up, and it was great to have those foundations built very early on, because I've been a prolific writer and collaborator ever since then. And so it was a great thing to do, and I've been fortunate to have some great cuts too, on some Aussie artist album, but I've also got a cut on Jim Lauderdale's new album, which is pretty exciting. And I've recorded a duet with him that I'm going to release in the new year, a bluegrass track as well.
Oh, so, nice. Are you singing a duet or playing, or what is it?
Yeah, singing a duet. Yeah.
That's great.
So, I've done about 4 trips to Nashville, and, I really love it there. I've got some great friends. I've made some great friends over the trips there. And I got to play on the Grand Ole Opry the last time I was over there, which was amazing, with Charles Eston.
Wow.
So that was an incredible experience. I think that makes me the youngest Aussie to play on the Grand Ole Opry. So that's pretty exciting.
Just playing on there, period, is a good. That's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, I know it is. And so it's still that experience when I walked out on stage there is still a blur to me, because Chip introduced me. How that came about was I wrote with Chip because we were introduced through some friends, and we wrote this song we both really felt connected to. And then I was eating at one of my favorite steakhouses in Nashville called Sperry's, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I saw Charles Eston come up on my phone and answered the call, and he said, hey, you up to anything tomorrow night? I'd love if you'd come and sing with me. We can do our song on the Grand Ole Opry. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so, everyone, Cassidy Pope and Sam Palladio were there, and Connie Smith, and
wow.
Gary Muledeer, and
I know all these people you're talking about.
And so, some great acts on there, and I got to meet quite a few of them before I was on, and it really kind of just eased the nerves, anything that I had there. And it was just such, they made me feel so welcome. And I stepped out, I was in the moment. But I also was just, in awe at the same time. I was just, I saw all these, just this, because it was at the Ryman. And so
the Ryman Auditorium,
this kind of gallery of people everywhere. And it was a kind of a pinch me thing, because I got to, kill 2 birds with one stone, really, playing on the Opry and at the Ryman Auditorium. So
yeah, it sounds like you're getting, cool. you're taking all my questions away. It sounds like every time I'm about ready to ask you something, you've already answered it. Because you were saying how much of a blur it was and what a great experience, but you can still remember what it was like to step on that stage in that auditorium and see all those people. I mean, that's
all I remember. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
About it is seeing all of those people. That was kind of it, and just looking over at Chip. And that was kind of it. And then I was off, and I was like, oh wow, I just played the Grand Ole Opry.
And you don't get and the nerves didn't get to you and anything like that.
No, well, there was a bit of nerves kind of prior to it, but as soon as I started to meet these people that were on the show too, and I was just chatting to Chip in the wings, and it really, I was really prepared for it. So
Yeah.
it was good, and it was like I don't generally get nervous if I really know my material, if I'm really well rehearsed and all that. But we'd only just written that song about a week or two prior, and so there was just a little bit of, you know, nervousness in there, and to know how the song went down, you know, how the song was going to go down as well, because, you know, a song's not complete until it's played for an audience. So, you know, there's always that kind of nervousness, and you're always a little bit unsettled before you get on and play a new song. So, you know, so that was something too.
Plus, also, there's also nervousness in a positive way. You know, you get it pumped up, excited, the adrenaline or whatever, and you're. And sometimes it can even be you know, a better experience because you're playing at your best level. You know. Yeah,
that's true.
That's good to know. Well, good. So it sounds like, you know, going back to when you were learning, you know, learning the craft. So you were teachable, huh? You didn't have any habits that you had to break, even as early on as you had it. You know.
No. I think I've always been a sponge, and so I was just taking in the whole everything that this guy Jim Haynes taught me. I was just taking it all in and just wanting to improve it with everything that I did, and I started winning some songwriting competitions, you know, around about that same time, and that really gave me, you know, this confidence in my, you know, writing ability as well. So that was good, and it's just opened up. I've just been, you know, prolific, you know, ever since that, and I've really got quite a few rungs up on the board in terms of collaboration, because I've written with so many people over here and then so many people overseas too. And I love to write on my own, and I love to write with other people and for other people's projects. So, you know, I enjoy being stretched creatively and through different genres too. So, you know, that's just, I love, I always say to Steve Earle, I say, you know, how come you did, you know, a blues album, a bluegrass album, and a rock album, and a kind of Celtic thing? And he said, I get bored. And I go, that is the best answer. And I'm a bit the same. I like the challenge of being able to work outside of my comfort zone as well.
Yeah. Plus, a guy like Steve, he's going to say, I don't care if you don't like it. If I'm going to do a rock album now instead, he's going to do what he wants to do.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's great to hear. But even though now I'm going to throw a little, it sounds like it's great to talk to somebody who's is prolific and is creating all the time, and your mind's always going. You always have something that have you ever had days or maybe a period like a week or so you just don't feel inspired to write anything or play anything? Anything ever catch you that way?
Yeah, well, generally I don't write unless I have an idea, but I'm always writing something. I'm always got something in this iPhone here that I'm always jotting down ideas, observations, titles, and I'm always reading. Like I particularly in kind of lockdown, I've been reading so much, and normally I don't get the opportunity to read as much when you're out on the road and you're just too tired and you kind of mind's just wandering all the time, and it's hard to sit down and really focus on something. And when you're driving or you know, heading for flights and things too, you know, sometimes that's a good time to read too, but sometimes you just don't feel like it. And it is a bit of a chore, but it's something as writers, you know, that's something that Steve said to me too when I met him when I was 15. He said, writers must read. And that stuck with me ever since. And I think it's a really important thing. Because, you know, you just constantly, like, not only do you get good ideas out of it, but it's just great to be constantly kind of, you know, you get this cadence, you pick up this cadence from reading too, but also, you know, I've always been one for a strong image, and I'm always trying to get those images into the things that I write. And I'm always the person, because I'm 85% a lyricist, and then, you know, the music kind of is that other 15%. Particularly when I write on my own, I almost write the whole lyric through before I even pick up an instrument. And so I'm always, when I'm in a room with someone else, I'm always trying to kind of go, okay, I think we need an image. Can we try and get an image in here? Because they're the things I'm drawn to, and they're the things that are really relatable. And sometimes you've got to be specific in order to be universal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you know,
that makes a lot of sense.
If you write something that's just so open, it's very hard for people to latch onto. And I think it's the same too when I do interviews, and some interviewers go, oh, well, tell us about your music. And it's like, oh, where do I start, Brenda? You know, it's very hard to kind of get your mind to anchor itself onto something, because it's such a broad question. And it's the same in songs that are so broad, where you kind of, as a listener, you kind of don't know how to relate to it or how to take it. So, you know, I think you do have to be specific to be universal.
Well, if you say such a huge portion is, you know, writing lyrics, that's great. Because I've talked to other people. Everybody's different. Some people are more melody, and then the lyrics come later on. So it sounds like, do you ever have an idea for a melody and then you just starting writing lyrics, or do you have are you sort of like writing poems or ideas and then turn them into a song later? And then,
well, no. I suppose I always have. I always know how the lyric's going to scan, and the, you know, also how it's going to feel when I write it. And usually, sometimes I will have a musical idea at the same time as the lyric. But look, I have written, and particularly working with track guys in the States, I do enjoy writing to a track that someone's just whipped up while you're in the room there, because it kind of it's a really right brain thing, having that track playing over and over and over. And it really, I thought it would just be irritating, you know, when they just kind of write this 8-bar thing and it's just playing it over and over. I thought I'd get really annoyed by it. And sometimes I have to say, oh, would you mind just stopping it while I think? Because, I really kind of am inspired by that as well. And you can do some great things phrasing wise and rhythmically with the lyric when you have that track playing, as opposed to just sitting there and working on a lyric solely. But yeah, I don't often get just standalone melody ideas. I do sometimes, but, you know, usually it's more of a phrase or a hook or a lyrical thing that will come to me. So, yeah. Well,
sounds good. Yeah, there's that. I accept that answer. Everybody has a different way of doing it. It's funny. Yeah. Like I'll say, well, tell me about your music, but, you know, or somebody will say, tell me how you write a song. And everybody has a different way of doing it. So it's there's no right or wrong way, you know, and some people use all the methods to do it. Yeah,
some people do, you know, but yeah, I think each to their own. And I've talked with a lot of kind of rock guys, and it's always this music that they, you know, it's always a melody or something that they have first and then write lyrics to it afterwards. So that's interesting too, you know, but for me it's the lyric that drives the whole thing. So
well, that's good. You know, when you say images, there are certain songs I've heard you do, and certain phrases will create a picture in your head, and that's kind of what you're up to. You exactly. like to do that, and that is very relatable. So just as there's a good hook in you musically, you write whatever the equivalent is of a hook in lyrics, because that's the way to do it.
And I think the other thing that I'm really attracted to is a great opening line. Like, the hook's got to be strong, but the great opening line really reels you in, and that's something that I love. I love when I hear a song and there's a great opening line, and I go, that is just a cracker, and it really just helps you. You know, it brings you through to the hook. So it's a really important device in a song. you know, because certain people just sit down and just, you know, write anything for an opening line. But that's the thing that I really try to work at, so that you hear it and you go, oh, okay, I want to hear more. So, yeah, I do look at things very much from a lyric point of view, but also, you know, your ear is drawn to a great musical hook, and a great melody and groove as well. So, you know.
Sounds like you have absorbed and you have learned a lot. So this is going to make you a great producer as well in the future, since this is what you want to do, because you'll be relatable to others, artists, and I don't know if you will impart your wisdom to them or not, but you know, because sometimes you gotta know when to get out of the way too, right?
You do, yeah. I you know, particularly when I'm producing vocals for another artist, you know, sometimes you do have to help them along, you know, if you can see, but then you just need to know too when to kind of let them do their thing. And so, and it's the same thing when you're tracking bed tracks with great players. Sometimes what they're playing, you've got to keep an open mind regardless, because sometimes what they're playing is not exactly what you're hearing in your head, except it's great. And so you leave that as it is because it's great, and it mightn't have been what you were thinking. So, you know, you need to have a sonic, as a producer, you need to have a sonic vision of where you're heading and this end goal. But you also at the same time need to be open for things to happen in the room. And I think the great thing about tracking this new album, 3 Minute Movies, was I got together with some players who worked for Paul Kelly, who is a legendary Australian singer-songwriter. And so I got Paul Kelly's band to come into the studio with me and track this album. And so I kind of, it's under Angus Gill and Seasons of Change. That's what I've called PK's band. And while I was producing that album, I think one of the greatest things was, because these guys are legendary Australian rock musicians, and I've come from a country background where, you know, production is a bit more slicker, and there's overdubs, and you know, you're trying to pay attention. Obviously, in more slicker, you know, commercial country, it's all tracked to a grid, and there's lots of quantizing and vocal tuning and comping and, you know, chopping things up, and it's very very slick sounding and shiny. Whereas this album, you know, we didn't track with a click track. There was hardly any overdubs. There was no tuning. It was all very raw and organic and authentic. And so, and it was brilliant to be able to work with these rock players that had very different musical influences to what I've got. And so, you know, it was very much, we had some Neil Young influences on this new record. We had Bruce Springsteen influences. We had lots of Beatle influences too. So Flying Burrito Brothers. And so there was some really, you know, bringing these group of players together. And actually, probably the most exciting thing for me was when they played through the tracks the first time, you know, and they went through that discovery phase, and it was like, okay, keep playing that. Whatever you're doing now, don't change a thing, because that is brilliant. And that's their first, you know, kind of take on the song. And so what we would do with that album is we would just go through and play about 3 or 4 whole takes of the song and choose whichever whole take we, you know, was really felt right. And so that's how we cut the album. And it was really, you know, I wanted to make an album that was similar to some of my favorite albums tracked in the 70s and the 80s. And so we tracked it in an analog studio. And it was really cool experience. And I'd love to track another album like that after it, because it was just, it felt like a live band playing together, because that's what it was, you know.
That's very good. Let me sort of reiterate a little bit, since people are going to go, the Angus made an album. I didn't, because Dean didn't mention it at the beginning. That was my fault. I was getting so excited about you know, introducing you and meeting you that I didn't tell people that Angus Gill has an album called 3 Minute Movies, and you released it least a month ago, right? Or over a month ago in Australia, September 25th. Yeah.
September 25th, and it was out in the States on the 16th of October.
Okay, so it's been out there. How have people been? Got some feedback on it?
Yeah, well, it's really been received well. We had a #1 album over here in Australia about 2 weeks ago, which was very exciting, and so that's that's brilliant, because obviously you create something that you're really proud of at the time, but to have that reaction is fantastic, and also because this musically is quite a shift from what I've done previously, that's fit more into the traditional country realm. This is more of a folk rock kind of singer-songwriter. It fits into alt country a little bit in certain tracks, but it's a different direction for me, and so it's been really well received by my audience, which is the main thing. And I wanted to do this album to kind of, because I love Paul Kelly and I love his sound. And I kind of had, after a particular trip I did to the States, I had songs that fell into two piles, one which formed my last album, Welcome to My Heart, and one which was sitting in this anonymous pile. I didn't really know what to do with those songs, but I started playing them out, and I could see there was an audience connection with those songs, and a good kind of tester is when people come up to you after the show and go, hey, do you have that on a CD? And I go, oh, sorry, haven't did anything with it yet, but, I was trying it out on you. You were my guinea pig. So, and so I just had this epiphany. I'd met Paul Kelly and his band actually through Steve Earle, because Steve and I have been friends since I was about 15. When I attended his writing retreat in New York, and he saw me helping myself to seconds at the buffet and come over and introduced himself, because I was way too intimidated to go up and speak to him. And so we kind of just hit it off, because he knows Australia really well. He's toured over here many times. And at the end of the week, he heard me sing, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, oh, if you keep going on like that, man, you're going to do just fine. And he gave me his contact details, and we catch up whenever he's over here or when I'm over in the States, obviously outside of COVID. And so I met Paul Kelly and his band through Steve, and I reached out to the guys, and they were really keen to do this album, and so that's how it all came about. And so
nice.
Like him and like Paul Kelly, I'm really interested in doing, like, I really admire artists who are always constantly exploring the space in which they occupy, and they don't ever get to locked into doing one thing and being put in that particular pigeonhole. And I love seeing that artistic growth, and Keith Urban has been a great more kind of contemporary example of someone that has done that. And people kind of go, oh, well, it's going into the realm of being really, a mainstream pop thing right now. And some people mightn't, be into the more current things as much as they liked his old stuff. But I really admire him for constantly pushing the boundaries of what country music can be and what his own sound is.
It's whatever his desire was. He'd probably still be doing that, and we wouldn't really know his name everywhere. He's known around the world now, probably because he's chosen to to branch out and expand a little bit and become pop. He, just because you do that doesn't mean he can't go back to doing his original. Exactly.
And he might at one point. He might decide that. But I think it's great seeing that, that real growth in an artist, and that's what I'm striving to do with my own things as well, because I'm a bit like Steve. I get bored.
I can understand that.
If I was going to make, like, I'm so conscious of trying to not recreate the last album that I did, and so, because it's pointless, it's a pointless exercise, and so I think it's really great to be going, okay, where am I going to take it this time around? You know, how am I going to step it up a bit? You know, how am I going to challenge myself artistically?
Well, you started talking about the album, which is great. We should get to talking a little bit about this, because I wanted to compliment you on a few things. First of all, who produced this? I mean, you're known for this is a self-produced album as well.
Yeah, and I mixed it as well. So I was very much at the front of the whole project.
You sure you weren't you sure you're not an award-winning chef? I tell you, there's a lot of things you do. You must are you a painter, or do you?
Well, look, I did an art class the other week, and there's always one person in the art class that the final product looks nothing like the original, and that was me. And it was this thing called this kind of franchise over here called Pinot and Picasso. Oh, yeah. And it's an excuse. Let's get pissed and paint. So it was.
There's a need for that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right?
So it was this art class where they supplied wine while you were painting. And so virtually, there got to be a point in the night where I didn't know which was the glass that I dipped my paintbrushes in and which was the one I was drinking out of. So,
wow.
There could have been a little bit of acrylic in my wine. So,
place like that sounds like a glorious disaster waiting to happen.
It really. So I suppose you would not call me a painter by any stretch of the imagination. Only if I've got wine in my hand.
I was jesting with you because it just sounds like I'm actually I don't know if I relate. I mean, I'm a lot older than you are now, so it's like. But I remember being at that age, and boy, you just want to do all kinds of things. Like you said, if you get bored, go on to some other thing, and then as long as you're creating stuff that really inspires you and excites you, I think that's what it's all about. And then people can interpret whether they like it too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's just particularly during these COVID times, it's important to be able to get yourself through, and whether you release it or not, or whether you have it. I think it's important to be creating, regardless, and using this time wisely, because that's what gets me through. Yeah. And I had several production projects I was producing for other artists lined up this year, and I haven't really been able to actually pursue many of them because of border closures. The artists haven't been able to come to my studio. And it's kind of, really put a spanner in the works, except I've kind of moved on with, I'm working on a project at the moment where everything's solely written by me, played by me, and produced by me. And, of course it's been great because I've just been able to do all of that, but I'm also producing this other album for some of my favorite Australian comedians, and they're all singing on the album. And so it's kind of this compilation thing that I've written the material with the comedians and produced the tracks, and they're singing on it. So it's a really unique thing. And we're actually up for an ARIA award for one of the songs. And the ARIA is the highest musical accolade that you can get over in Australia. And so we're up for the best comedy release on that, which is exciting as well. I never would have come about unless COVID hit.
Yeah.
It's just the thing. Well, what am I going to do now? What's the next thing? Because when you're on the road, it's it's hard to be prolific writing and even in producing when you're touring all the time, because that's a thing in itself, and you're so honed into that, and so it's hard to get that time off doing that unless you set that time aside.
I enjoyed the album. I'll tell you right now. I thought it starts out really, really upbeat and happy. That 3-minute movie is a very good song. And let me skip real quick to the Steve Earle, since you were talking about him a couple times. So you tell us how you met him. How did you get him back to to do this song called "The New Old Me" or the old new? Well,
the New Old Me. Yeah, how that happened was I wrote the song with a good friend of mine, over here called Alan Caswell, and he's one of Australia's most recorded songwriters. And he's a good friend of mine, and so we were just hanging out at his place in the Blue Mountains in Sydney, and I said, "Oh man, I've got this title that's been kicking around in my head. It's this outlaw country thing," and I had this groove on the guitar that I was playing. I said, "It's called The New Old Me." And I said, "I think it's a duet." And we started writing it as a kind of a duet for him and I to do. And then I pulled him up and I said, halfway through, I said, "Would you mind? I think this is something that I could do with Steve Earle. What do you think about that?" And his eyes just lit up, and he, because Steve Earle's one of his heroes, and he said, "Really? Could we really do this?" And I said, "Yep, look, I'll send the track to him, after we get it all done." And so we put the track down, and I gave him a call, and he heard the track and loved it, and thankfully, and put his part down during COVID. And sent it through to me, and that was just we had the album all finished by then, because we tracked this album in December of 2018, and I kind of hadn't had a chance to getting around to mixing it and kind of finishing it off, because I had another album out last year which I was touring a lot, and so I kind of had the opportunity at the start of this year to finish off this album too, to doing all the mixing and kind of finishing touches on it. And so, so that was how Steve come to be on the track. But I was really happy that he really liked the song and did it with me. But I kind of knew it was up his alley too. I thought, look, I obviously really hoped that he would do it, but I kind of had a bit of faith that he would too, because we're really good friends, and I knew if he had the time and he liked the song that he'd do it. So
yeah, and he gave it a nice gritty edge to it because of the way he sings, and
I
liked it.
I just love what he does.
Well, there's some things I wouldn't do just for the sake of change. Anger once used whiskey is a shortcut to my brain. Well, I'm the last man standing from a happy bunch of fools who thought that they were big enough to kick against the rules. Well, I had a flair for screwing up, as most of you'd agree. Oh, welcome to the new old me. To put their crap on me like I was just a kid. You told me to toughen up, buddy, that's just what I did. I built myself a stronger heart so it don't break no more. I grew myself a second skin that was thicker than before. When you're looking in the mirror now, all you see. Welcome to the new old me. So we're ripping off the rich so we can give it to the poor. Guys like us can see the world from both sides of the law. Credit, 'cause I know there's credit due. I just taught you bits and tricks and the rest was up to you. Got my future covered because I've learned from your mistakes, and I can run big rings around the phonies and the fakes.
Maybe you die, well, it's not my responsibility. Welcome to the new old me.
Yeah, well, I can do just what I want while I'm stupid, young and free. Welcome to the new old me.
Just love what he does, you know.
Thanks for that. 3-minute movie. Tell me about that real quick, because that's how you start out the album, and that's a good way of, you talking about opening line for a song. That's a good opening track for the whole album. It gets you. It really draws you in and gets you interested. Because later.
I just like how that song. I had that title, and it was kind of inspired. Like the song is written in an interesting way, and it's not a very typical song in that sense, and because it's a very happy, uplifting, Farfisa driven song.
Yeah.
But the opening verse talks about when I saw my grandpa before he passed away when he was 65 with cancer.
Oh, no
and
kidding.
he was in the hospital, and it was such a sad image, but you could see that he was kind of replaying these image, his 3-minute movie in his head before he passed away. And so, it kind of really, the lyric juxtaposes that music at the start, and I kind of, it was interesting that we started the song how we did, but I just like how it's quite positive, even though it's such a sad kind of experience. But then after that made me think of other times in my life where something's happened and you kind of feel as though you've been there before, or something happens and it triggers this 3-minute movie to play in your head. And so it kind of shifted from me watching Grandpa to the own experiences in my life where I've had that kind of 3-minute movie play through my head.
Yeah. Wow.
And we all get those. We all get those times where we feel like we've been here before, or we feel something significant will happen, and it'll just encourage us to think back, and kind of view our life in this 3-minute movie, in our head, flashbacks, and we often, replay things in our mind over and over and over when we go to sleep at night, and that's kind of what the song talks about. Well,
that now you told me what inspired it, that gives me a new pause to go back and listen to it some more, because it sounds like and plus you're more driven you're more drawn to the lyrics. I'm more of a a melody and arrangement type of person. So I really like the let's call them Seasons of Change. The PK band was really cooking on that one. And when as you said, it was a Farfisa type of song. And I think that probably had something to do with it, because I grew up on groups that use that stuff, that organ, Blondie and the B-52s and Dire Straits and Devo, and they always
Doors. The
Doors did that, yeah. Sly and the Family Stone, there's a lot of. Anyway, that's just from that point of view, a person in his late 50s listening to it is going, this has a nice feel to it. It almost feels like a retro, a good feeling comes from all the music on this album. So
thank you. That was kind of the plan, because I'm a big, I really shouldn't have been born in 1998. I should have been born much earlier, because I am quite an old soul, and I really do love older music, from the 70s and the 80s, and I've just acquired a big vinyl collection, and so I'm really all into that. But the Farfisa, you don't hear it very often.
No, you don't.
Nowadays. So we really wanted to bring that back.
Old Grandpa was a big inspiration. He told me not to sell my dreams, but to chase them. If you got a vocation, son, it can be a vacation. I remember the day that I went to see him, sitting up in his chair and high on the morphine we live, and his whole life he wasn't scared of his 3-minute movie, like we all see in the movies. You can't believe it's happening, your whole life's flashing like a picture show. This 3-minute movie, so much bigger than the movies, the one you're supposed to dread, but he had no regrets when the credits rolled on. This 3-minute movie, I took his advice and man, I lived it. It's still in my head saying ask for the business life's not what you get, it's all that you give it. I was driving one night and that's when it hit me. Red light didn't stop that Ford 150, and that was my first trip down the street of memory. I saw that 3-minute movie, like we all see in the movies. You can't believe it's happening, your whole life's flashing like a picture show. This 3-minute movie, so much bigger than the movies, the one you're supposed to dread, but I had no regrets when the credits rolled on. This 3-minute movie, on the corner of Main, I ordered up a doppio latte. She wrote my name on the cup and I had to take a double take. I saw that 3-minute movie, like we all see in the movies. You can't believe it's happening, your whole life's flashing like a picture show. This 3-minute movie, so much bigger than the movies, the one you're supposed to dread, but I had no regrets when the credits rolled on. This 3-minute movie, this 3-minute movie.
Yeah, that's funny. You said the Doors. Yeah, that's another one that would really. Yeah. The Hey Underdog is that's the second track on here, and that's that sort of slows down. You go from that 3-minute movie, and then you slow it down a little bit. You have sort of a slower ballad type of song, Hey Underdog, but it's more of a. Maybe I can have you tell me what inspired you to write that one.
Well, I wrote that one with a great songwriter, Nashville Songwriter Hall of Famer Jeffrey Steele, and a Grammy-winning songwriter Vicky McGeehee, and a producer called Providence David, and that was in 2018 when I did a trip to Nashville, and I had this idea. I wanted to write a song for the underdog, because over here we're really obsessed with the underdog in this country, whether it comes to sporting events or just, in life or in business, or we really like an underdog, someone that
type of comeback, overcoming story.
And so it's quite a positive song. It sings of hope, and people relate to it because of that, and because perhaps the underdog is them. You can see like I can see, parts in, I can see myself as an underdog in a certain way. And I think we can kind of, we have a tendency to do that, I think it is a really relatable song. Musically it was kind of the drummer, Peter Luscombe, brilliant drummer. He kind of had this idea to kind of have this Harvest Neil Young kind of feel, and we had the guitar player Ash Naylor played his solo through a Leslie speaker, which is a very Beatles-esque thing to do.
Oh yeah.
And so the song is quite unique in itself, and it's more this kind of stripped back folk rock thing.
Hey, underdog, you sure did hold you down. Said that you ain't got what it takes to make it in this town. Called you second place, second best. Said you ain't gonna catch that dream. You ran right by those never believers who never did believe. Hey, underdog, boy, when you're riding high, everybody's on your side. You were right, they were wrong. Now the whole world's singing along. Hey, underdog, sun shining on your face. Yeah, you finally found that place. What's that old saying say? Every dog has its day. Hey, underdog, you were standing next to giving up, about to take the bait and throw away. Give up everything you love, ditch it on the side of the road, watching it roll. Aren't you glad you didn't let it go and take the easy way out? Where would you be right now? Hey, underdog, boy, when you're riding high, everybody's on your side. You were right, they were wrong. Now the whole world's singing along. Hey, underdog, sun shining on your face. Yeah, you finally found that place. What's that old saying said? Every dog has its day. Hey, underdog. Guess you knew it all along. They could only keep you down for so long. Hey, underdog, boy, when you're riding high, everybody's on your side. You were right, they were wrong. Now the whole world's singing along. Hey, underdog, sun shining on your face. Yeah, you finally found that place. What's that old saying say? Every dog has its, every dog has its, every dog has its day. Hey, underdog.
And I think the interesting thing about the album is that the first three tracks on the album have been the first three singles in that order. And so, yeah, so I think it's a good second track to the album, because, you know, three-minute movies, wherever we placed it in the album, it was always going to be kind of a bit of a, you know, intense thing. So yeah, it didn't matter where we put it, it was always going to be. So I thought it was a good way to kind of start and end with that song, because all of the songs on their album in their own way are 3-minute movies with a, you know, beginning, middle and end.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking it was about. But, you know, now that you explained what that actual track was about, that's a wonderful thing. So, yeah, we've mentioned 3 singles, but one thing I wanted to throw in, because I wanted to compliment you when we're talking about images, you wrote something called Skin Story. And that was a good one. I like the feel of it musically. I love how it plays out. And you use a lot of imagery in there when you're talking about, you know, Skin Story, meaning that, you know, like, I guess we're talking about, you know, tattoos and or ink or anything on the, you know, that's telling a story of you, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not covered in tattoos, but I did get one after I wrote that song, because I I had the idea for the song.
You influenced yourself by getting a tattoo.
I know, I did. Well, I thought, I'd just be a bit fake if I didn't go out and get a tattoo. And so, but no, I'm a very good observer, and I gravitate towards characters that have got something, different about them, and I know so many people that kind of, explain their life story to you by the tattoos that they've got,
Yeah.
They've got their kids' names and their dogs' names and their cousins' names all tattooed up their arm. And then, there's a good friend of mine has a rose on his arm here, which is a cover-up from his ex-girlfriend's name that he had right here.
Oh, one of those things.
If you look close enough, you can still see her name kind of there. But it was a good cover-up, actually. It looks really, really good. And so, yeah, I had this idea, and I had the title Skin Stories lying around for years before I actually wrote the song with a friend of mine. And so, yeah, there is quite some, there's some strong imagery in there. And I also had the line, cards on my chest and heart on my sleeve.
Right. That's what got me. See, there you go. Talking about the image.
I had that lying around because I love a good play on words when it's done right. And I had that lying. I had those lines lying around. And I had the opening line to I've got a few stories on my skin and I don't feel a thing until the needle goes in. And I had that kind of sitting around. And so, yeah, I hooked up with a friend of mine who's got a lot of tattoos and wrote that song with him. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. That was great. I thought I'd compliment you on that one because it was a good idea, and it was and it's probably one of those things that it was one of those things you might have written down or talked into your phone. You had this idea and you just sort of put it away for a while. You knew you had it, and it came out later on as something. Yeah. Yeah,
it's interesting. That song also nearly didn't make the album because I thought, it's kind of it's a bit off track from what the rest of the album is kind of about. And I thought, is it going to poke out too much? And now it's one of my favorite tracks. And and it really, when we tracked it too, I didn't know. I had no idea I wanted it to be this kind of rock thing, but the drummer and I were certainly on the same page with how it was going to feel, and we wanted this born in the USA type driving thing. And then it was kind of a last minute decision on my part as a producer to get a bagpipes player to play on the album.
There you go. To play on the song. I mentioned the bagpipes.
And so we got this great Scottish bagpiper called Lorne McDougall, and he's played on all of these movie soundtracks and different albums over in Scotland. And so I sent the track to him, and that was really one of the only overdubs that we had. And the other one was a horn section on Acquainted with the Night. Yeah. And so that was a last minute call, but I'm so glad I did that because it kind of even gives it a bit of an AC/DC.
I was going to say, I haven't heard bagpipes since It's a Long Way to the Top by AC/DC because that's the last time I heard bagpipes in a rock song.
Yeah. So that was the vibe I was going for. Yeah.
Well, compliments to the way you mixed it because, when it was because if you hadn't mentioned it, I was going to mention the bagpipes because I was thinking, there's a farfisa in there again, but maybe and I had to listen a little bit. That you mixed it so well that you didn't know you were listening to bagpipes. You were kind of like, that sounds kind of cool, but what is that? And then every once in a while, it reveals itself. You can hear, especially at the end, you can hear that last little blow.
You can. Yeah. And I had to do that too because they are such an overpowering instrument. They're so loud and so piercing, and so I really did have to kind of, I didn't want them to stand out too much because they were playing that same motif that the guitar was playing, and so I didn't want it to be too kind of in your ear.
Yeah, don't let me in. I don't want to insult McDougall with that by saying that, that bagpipes can be very annoying sometimes, but, if you play them too long, but you managed to make them sound very pleasant and very cool sounding. So,
thank you. Yeah.
And truth be told, McDougall, played very well. So
he's a fantastic player. Yeah. So it was great to have him on there. But they are very loud and you know, like I've heard them played in the flesh, and you know, they really do pierce your ears. You know.
I've got a few stories on my skin, and I don't feel a thing when the needle goes in. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, man, I'm trying to be tough. But once you get one, one's never enough. They might fade in time, but these colors don't run. If you wanna know where I'm coming from, here they are for all to see. Cars on my chest and my heart on my sleeve. Such is life, the Southern Cross. Ones that I love and the ones that I lost. They're right there and I don't care what people call me. Yeah, I'm proud of my skin story. First tattoo was a pretty girl's name. Had to get it covered up when she moved away. Well, it's been 10 years, Grandpa's been gone. But right above my heart, his words live on. Sure, there's a few that I regret, but I got a lot of years and a lot of skin left. Here they are for all to see. Cards on my chest and my heart on my sleeve. Such is life, the Southern Cross. Ones that I love and the ones that I lost. They're right there and I don't care what people call me. Yeah, I'm proud of my skin story. Here they are for all to see. Cards on my chest and my heart on my sleeve. Such is life, an old toy car. Ones that I love and the scars of my past. They're out there and I don't care what people call me. The good and the shit on show in all their glory. Yeah, I'm proud of my skin story.
You know. Yeah.
well, this has been a lot of fun talking about your like I said, this maybe you've gotten the gist of what my show is about. Yeah, I'll spotlight your music. I love showing off the artist's work and letting people take a listen to it. So people are going to hear that song. And any other ones that you're proud of on this album that sort of like you liked more than the other ones?
I suppose I really like Acquainted with the Night. Because
that's a cool one, sure.
You know, that was one I wrote on my own. Because how it happened originally was I had written a song. I wanted to put a poem to music, and so I had a poem by Robert Frost of the same title called Acquainted with the Night. And I wrote this piece of music to that poem. We tracked the music, and then we realized we weren't able to get rights to the poem. And so I rewrote the poem using the same structure and kind of taken the genesis of the idea, because it's a song about, you know, the darkness of one's mind, and it kind of contemplates. You know, I've lost a few friends over the last couple of years to suicide, and it kind of it grapples with the idea of mortality in the song, and so. I kind of, because that poem was written a long time ago, and so I kind of updated it and made it a bit more, you know, current to what, you know, what we experience in the world and what we see other people go through. And so even though the original poem really does stand the test of time, but when we realised we couldn't use it, I didn't want to do away with the track completely, but I wanted to keep the same kind of idea because titles aren't copyrighted, and so I really kept the same structure of the poem too, so that it all fitted in, and then we got this horn section in on it last, and that was, you know, another overdub that we did, and so it really kind of gives this Billy Joel kind of 52nd Street thing. And I like about the lyric that I wrote for it is that it doesn't tell you exactly what to think. It sets up the clues about what the song's about, except it's not, it kind of, you take what you want from the song and you leave the rest behind. And you hear different things. I think, well, I hear different things every time I go back and play that track. Right. So I like songs like that where they kind of, they grow on you, and they grow in meaning, you know, when you listen to them several times over.
Yeah.
So
I've been acquainted with the night, been out in the rain, again and again, been covered in dark and seen a flash of light. I've lost myself down a side street labyrinth, seen my own reflection in a beggar's glassy eye, been trying to keep on moving ever since. I've stood beside a rushing midnight train, had a lightning bolt moment strike at the speed of sound. Is something lost ever really something gained? And if I laid out my eights and aces, they would have burnt my deck of cards. If I went off to join the shadows, they'd be living with my past.
I'm trying to read something here in the dark. It's getting darker, and I know it's early in the morning where you are, but it's getting late where I am. But the Golden Guitar nominated artist and producer, meaning you, has collaborated with some of Music Row's biggest hit makers who have taken Keith Urban, Kenny Chesney, Dolly Parton, and Tim McGraw to numerous Billboard #1 positions. I thought this was telling me that you worked with all these people, but you've...
I've worked with the writers, quite a few of those guys, like Jeffrey Steele, who I wrote Hey Underdog with. He wrote the smash hit for Rascal Flatts, What Hurts the Most.
Oh, really?
And Steele. And he's a big song. He's a Nashville Songwriter Hall of Famer. I wrote with for actually an upcoming project. I wrote with David Lee Murphy, who's had been a great artist in his own right with a huge song he had called Dust on the Bottle. But he's also, I think he just recently had another hit with Kenny Chesney, Everything's Gonna Be All Right. and then we had Vicky McGehee, who also wrote on Hey Underdog. She won a Grammy for a duet she wrote with for Tim and Faith, and we also had Bob DePiro on the album. He wrote a song with me called Coming of Age. And you know, he was great to write. He wrote one of my favorite songs, George Strait's Blue Clear Sky. And so, you know, we had a lot of, you know, great, you know, Nashville hit songwriters on this album that I collaborated with too. And another one being Trey Bruce, the son of Ed Bruce, who wrote Jackson.
Wow. So you're surrounding yourself with some good people. That never hurts, you know, when because that just plays off your creativity. You probably you walk away, probably even when you collaborate with people, you become inspired too, don't you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
Sound like you're typing away there. Me too. I'll do that.
Yeah.
But it does say that you did open for Chris Christopherson, which is that's a pretty incredible thing to put in your bio.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was last year, in end of September last year. So he toured over here, and that was amazing to be able to open for him. It was a little bit bittersweet in the same token because you know, he's got Lyme's disease, and it was really sad to kind of see how he was deteriorating.
Oh, really? So it was apparent when he was doing the show, or
well, he couldn't really have a conversation, you know, because I thought, you know, it'd be great to kind of pick his brains and have a chat about songwriting, because he's one of my heroes, and
he knows everything. He's been everywhere.
Yeah. And I had a great chat to his wife, but he was just, he found it hard to sustain a conversation, and he didn't really talk on stage at all either. He kind of come up and he did 2 sets, which is awesome, but yeah, you know, it was just sad to see. I know what you're saying. Disease had taken him there, because you know, he's one of my heroes, and so, but yeah, that was kind of, you know, bit of a sad thing, but at the same token, I was in awe of the fact I got to open for him and see him play a gig. You know,
still good experience, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Totally unrelated, but that's the way I feel about somebody like Neil Diamond, who's he's got Parkinson's now. That's
right.
So that's going to affect his voice, and you know, sooner or later you'll want to put you doing something that you have loved for years and years, and you may have to hang it up now. Even at your age, you can still do it. You know. Yeah,
it's the same. I had a friend that opened for Glenn Campbell in his kind of last years, and you know, he had Alzheimer's, and so you know, my friend said it was really sad. He'd walk out and sing Rhinestone Cowboy, and then turn around and go off stage, and someone had to push him on and go, "Oh, Glenn, you've only sung one song. You know,
I enjoyed out there." I met him once, got to see him perform. This was like his second to last album he did. And he still had. This was when it was announced that he had the Alzheimer's, and that it was just starting or starting to become apparent. And he could still do the solos. He did a few of these solos on his guitar, and after he did it, he almost like pumped his fist and goes, "Yeah, I did it." So, so he knew that he was struggling with it, but it made him so happy to have to do something like that. You know, he's legendary for just, you know, not just singing, but, you know, playing guitar and many instruments like you. Lots of instruments. And I think he can play bagpipes as well. So
yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's too bad we lost him. He was one of my heroes growing up. Glenn Campbell.
We've lost some amazing, you know, legendary musicians over the last couple of years, which is just
this year alone is a lot of it.
Year, tragic. You know, John Prine, Mac Davis, Billy Joe Shaver,
Kenny Rogers, right?
Kenny Rogers, you know, just horrific. Really,
so many. And somebody who's not around either, you mentioned in your song, you mean Monopoly, you put a George Jones reference in there, which was kind of nice. That's
Well, that song was actually a bit kind of John Prine inspired, because I loved that song of his, Illegal Smile, and how it shifts from 4/4 time to 3/4 time. And I wanted to do that with the song, and I had that idea, and that was the right idea to kind of contrast between, a fast-paced life and then just taking things slow and kind of chilling out at home. And so, so there's a bit of kind of quirkiness in that song as well, which was inspired by Prine a bit. So, but we've got the line about George Jones on the stereo in that song as well.
Yeah, that's a great line. Well, I'll tell you what, Angus, it's been what a great time I've had talking with you. I hope it's been the same for you. It's been great being on your show. No, I'm just kidding, because I couldn't get you to. Most people I have to, it's the worst kind of show for me is when I have to pry something out of somebody, but. You're very forthcoming, and you got all these stories and ideas in your head, and this is golden to me. I really appreciate that you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. I hope everybody will check him out. Now, angusgill.com, I think, or no, because you're Australia. It's AU because it's Australia. Yeah. And by the way, it's in the future. You're in the future because it's 9 a.m. a day from a day ahead of me, and I think
you're gazing into the future.
Yeah. At least we started this talk. It was 3 p.m. in Los Angeles, and in Queensland, Australia. There's I think it was 9 a.m. maybe, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So the next day. So I loved that tired old joke. Hey, what's it like in the future? Tell me what's going to happen in a couple hours. Yeah. So anyway, let's see. 3-minute movies by Angus Gill and Seasons of Change, aka the PK Band. It was released September 25th in Australia and October 16th, I think you said, here in the States.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. Please check it out. If you didn't understand the URL, the internet address, I will make sure that everybody knows it on my page. And let me ask you one last question. Sounds like you're a pretty confident guy, and we talked earlier about not being inspired, but is there anything you might be able to impart as a last, maybe for other songwriters and artists who have a little bit of trouble getting inspired? Sometimes they'll fall down, and they're not really, like, even in COVID, they might be like going through a real tough period because they can't get out and perform, and maybe they're not being creative. Hopefully they're not drinking too much, things like that.
Yeah.
But the songwriter, as an artist, your spirit sometimes will go up and down, depending on how you can control that. Is there a way you might be able to, some kind of words you might be able to, it sounds like you might be understanding what I'm asking you.
Yeah. Look, I would say, I'd go back to saying, this is probably the best piece of advice I've been given, but writers must read, pick up a book. If you're struggling for ideas and you'd like to be inspired, I think that's a really great way. That's what works for me. And I actually know, people like Prine kind of didn't read as much, so there's always exceptions to the rule, but a lot of great writers, read. And so that's what I'd say if you kind of, stuck for some inspiration, because you can get a lot out of a really good book. And then I think, the thing that keeps the works for me, I suppose, keeping on top of your mental health and kind of how you're feeling. Exercise, I always try and go out for an afternoon walk and go to the gym every day. And I can't always do that while I'm on the road, but I sure try to do it. And I think it just keeps you balanced all round. So yeah, that's when. But music heals. It's always the thing that gets us through. So
that's right. If you're not into sports and you're more into music, music is the thing that will pick you up and get you going. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
And as far as those books, is feed yourself some good things, and it'll come out in your music or whatever else you create. Right.
Totally.
Great. Yeah. That's inspiring to me. I think I'm ready to go out there and do it some more. So it's been a wonderful experience talking with you. I love you're so young, 22. what must be in your future. I hope lots of great things, and I hope more. I hope I get to see more of you out there. You know, I'd love to be able to say that I saw him, even though he started young. I got to see him at this point in his life when he's really becoming, you know, picking up the pace and becoming hot and putting out some great music. And what more can I say? Angus Gill's the man. I appreciate it. I really do.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the chat, Dean. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And to get a hold of his album, you know, just you can go on a search engine, Google or whatever, and look up his name, Angus Gill, ANGUS GILL. And I'll make sure you have the right address. I think it's angusgill.au.
.com.au.
Always put the .com.au. Yeah. I should know this stuff. I was there when the internet was invented, but I still don't know how to, you know, everybody's got a different, it's good that you were able to get your name. So that's a great thing too.
Yeah.
So enjoy yourself over there. I understand you're not at home, but you're visiting or something. So have a great day today. And thanks for chatting with me. And it's been a real treat. So Angus Gill, everybody. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. And
thanks, Dean. No, great chat. Really, really enjoyed that. So
okay.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. Good to meet you.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay. See you later.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.